And nobody else had this. The only people getting it were the Dead and Willie. And I was getting it from the guy who supplied the Dead. And, you know, he wanted to know who was going to get it. And I said, only Willie Nelson's going to get it. He said, deal. And that went on for years. That went on for 2 or 3 years. So slowly, and up until that, even when I got out of it, we didn't have the weed we have today. It wasn't until the 80s at some point, at least in my world, that people started getting serious about growing it in exotic strains and doing the cross breeding, which is a science. And Willie used to have a fine time asking me when I'd show up, where in the world are we going tonight, Andrew? With a big grin on his face. And, you know, at times taking weed out on the road to those guys, I'd come on stage in the back of the stage and they'd be playing to an open amphitheater or whatever. And one at a time they'd turn around and they'd see me. And it would be like the Red Cross arriving at the trenches during World War I. I mean, they'd be stuck out on the road somewhere and they couldn't get anything but a Michigan brown dirt weed or something. And it was, it brought a visceral excitement because they knew where in the world are we going to go. So that was it was some of the best Michoacan actually I ever had. Now down there, when we bought it, my friend spoke Spanish. I kept seeing him do this with his hand, and that meant half kilos. So I was used to seeing kilos in construction paper wrapped with cellophane, different color cellophane, is how it used to come to us. But these were half bricks, and the reason that we got the half bricks was you could package them tighter, which made sense. So it made a lot more packets than 200, or kilos were 2.2 pounds. These were 1.1. So they were smaller, easier to bundle, easier to carry. The way our operation worked was we drove all the way up to the Sonoran Desert, out to a little town called Agua Prieta, which is right on the Mexican side of the Arizona border. And it was the night Richard Nixon was elected to his first term, actually. Drove Steve out back to the desert, and he packed, I think he made 5 trips. He had to go 12 miles round trip, and hid in a parking lot, junior college. I had to come all the way back around, come up through Nogales. The bus got checked out completely. Then I had to drive back up and drive all the way back down the border to Douglas, Arizona, probably 100 miles. Took hours and hours. And there was my partner in the parking lot, in the bushes of that junior college. And it's the middle of the night, and we loaded up, drove back to California. So nowadays, to think you can almost go to 7-Eleven and buy joints, I mean, it'll be that way soon. It's, the road from there to here is very close to me, dear to my heart, and I'm really glad that America woke up. We were comparing everything to Mexican weed. Yeah. So when we got some Acapulco Gold, it was really good Mexican weed. I've never seen gold like the gold we used to get, and I don't know why, but it was really gold. I mean, the whole bag was gold buds. Not off gold, not green and gold, pretty much all gold.
We have?
I've never seen it again. And it was, you couldn't compare it to any of the regular Mexican or Colombian weed that was coming through. It had its own distinct taste. It was consistently that high that you got from it. Thai sticks were peppery, the real Thai sticks from Thailand. Once again, the smell, the taste, nothing could touch it. So they were hybrids, I guess you would have to say. And they weren't around all the time. So most of the time we had to deal with Colombian and Mexican weed, which there was good Mexican, there was poor Mexican, same with Colombian, but it was all kind of grouped together. So the big difference now is, and you know, it's one of the reasons Willie liked my weed so much, was that when I first discovered the real true variations was this, from this guy who was growing it, this botanist up in Davis, who had seeds from all over the world. And this was early 70s, right around 70. And, you know, if it said Tanzanian orange bouquet, that's what it was. It wasn't some name to market with. That's what it was. And he had, I mean, that's just an example. And he marketed it in 1 ounce mason jars with a label like from an apothecary from the 1800s. And it all said bladder medicine in these little scripts. And then where there was a little room on the label, he would handwrite before he put them on the blend and where it was from. With marijuana, that anxiety can be brought under control. Sleep problems, they're only scratching the surface of the medicinal benefits of cannabis, of THC, and it will continue. From the first time I tried marijuana in my friend's backyard when I was 18, I knew that this was great, and this wasn't going to hurt me, and this was going to be better than alcohol. And I'd seen alcohol wreak havoc in my family. So I was sold on marijuana very early on, and I wanted my friends to know about it. Now, I can't really say why I immersed myself so much in it, other than it seemed, miracle is kind of a strong word, but it was fun, and it appeared to me to be harmless, far more harmless than alcohol. I bought, I think I bought a 1/4 pound or 1/2 pound up in San Francisco. I was young, I was 18, not even 19 yet. And we called them lids back then, and sold it by the ounce. I found myself drawn towards the poor parts of town, and what wonderful people the poorest people can be. And I learned that on that trip to Mexico, and it's paid dividends. They care just as much about their families, they care just as much about their children and getting a good education, etc. And I think a lot of Americans don't appreciate that. We almost got caught several times getting it out. It was sometimes referred to as the Three Stooges smuggling marijuana, but in spite of ourselves, it was a successful trip. For me, one time was enough. Somebody else could do it. Somebody else could have a turn. But I have respect for the people that did it, because like I said, somebody had to keep the supply routes coming and going. I never got involved with flying it or, you know, being on the big time where it was a small time operation. The people who brought that back really appreciated it. It was some good Michoacan.